Why is Disneyland's castle so small? This is a question I get a lot, and I think in this day and age, people are so used to the Disney company building massive towering castles at their parks that people look back at the original Disneyland and can't help but hold a tape measure to it. So how tall is Disneyland's castle? Well, it stands 77 feet tall, or 23.5 meters for you folks using the metric system, but other Disney castles are much taller. Cinderella Castle at Walt Disney World stands 189 feet tall, or 57.5 meters. And then there's the largest Disney castle ever built, Enchanted Storybook Castle in Shanghai, Disneyland. Towering 197 feet, or just about 60 meters high, that makes it almost 3 times taller than the original in Anaheim. Now first, it's important to remember the original Sleeping Beauty castle was constructed on a budget. I mean, originally there were plans to have the castle slightly larger, but as plans were finalized, they downsized the design to what we have today. Nevertheless, the castle was the tallest building in Disneyland when the park opened in 1955, and because the surrounding Anaheim landscape was nothing but farmland at the time, the little castle could be seen up to a mile away. Anyway, this brings me to my next point. The building was always going to be designed to include forced perspective. Forced perspective is a technique often used in the entertainment industry to make objects appear either larger or smaller than they actually are. In the case of Sleeping Beauty Castle, the scale of the building gets smaller the higher up you look, starting from about 5/8 scale at the bottom to 1/4 scale at the very top. But even more confusing than that, the scale also randomly changes depending on which tower you're looking at. It's not meant to smoothly transition or even make logical sense, and that's on purpose. You see, while the castle's forced perspective is designed to make it look bigger than it really is, it's also designed to epitomize the physical image of a fairy tale castle. There's also another aspect of the forced perspective design. Imagineers wanted the park itself to appear much larger than it really was, with walkways seeming to stretch on into vast open spaces. The park's plaza, which is also referred to as the hub, was intended to provide a large gap of space between the turn-of-the-century Main Street and the medieval castle. But the hub at Disneyland really isn't a big enough space to provide the expansive gap Imagineering had wished for. So, by carefully planning the size and scale of Sleeping Beauty Castle, they were able to make the castle seem farther away from the 1900s town than it actually is. You can see the noticeable difference when you examine Hong Kong Disneyland. The castle, Main Street, and hub area were originally built as an exact replica of the one in Anaheim, but when the castle was remodeled to be larger, it suddenly became clear just how obtrusive the larger version is on the aesthetics of the 20th century Main Street. Also, with Disneyland's castle being as small as it was, it didn't intrude as much into the skyline of other lands, but when it did, it made the landscape look larger since the castle appeared farther away. Florida's Magic Kingdom Park isn't that much bigger than Disneyland. It only appears several times larger because of forced perspective. By reserving a lot of space to build the vast central plaza, it made Cinderella Castle not only appear even larger than it already was, but it also provided that physical distance necessary to make the park appear to dwarf its Anaheim counterpart. Alright, so we've established why Disneyland's castle is so small. Tight budget, forced perspective, and sightlines. But now some of you newcomers are probably wondering, what's inside Disneyland's Sleeping Beauty Castle? Well, originally, nothing. When the park opened, the structure was honestly just an empty shell, but once the crowd started filling the park on a daily basis, Walt Disney insisted his Imagineers find a use for the castle's interiors since he didn't like to let space go to waste. The first thing to go in was a souvenir stand on the bottom level, but in 1957 they opened the Sleeping Beauty Castle walkthrough exhibit. If you want to learn more about the exhibit and the history of the castle itself and all its changes, be sure to check out my video all about it. There will be a link at the end of the video and in the description below. You might have one last question then. Will Disneyland ever make the castle larger? The simple answer is that it's highly unlikely. You see, not only is Disneyland's Sleeping Beauty Castle the original Disney Park castle, but it's also a historical icon for the company. Generation upon generation of adults and children grew up with this memorable park structure. Changing it that drastically would upset a lot of fans. Plus, there really is no reason to make it larger. It serves no purpose. The only reason Hong Kong Disneyland made theirs larger was to make that park more distinguishable from its Anaheim counterpart. If Disneyland and Anaheim were to make their castle larger, it would be so they could build a restaurant on the second floor. But Disney can't justify that kind of expense and public outcry just to gain a few square feet of space. Besides, while people such as myself welcome changes to Disneyland, there are a few things even I feel strongly about. Seeing the original Main Street and the original Sleeping Beauty Castle are part of the experience you get of being able to see a portion of the park through the eyes of the past. You get to see what your parents saw. You get to view the castle that Walt Disney himself peered up at 65 years ago. And that is a really special feeling.